today. Thank you for this wonderful city that we live in. We ask you to watch over us tonight as we make the decisions for the city. Let them be fair and just for all parties. Please watch over our troops here and abroad. They're what make this country, this state, and this city safe. We ask this in his name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, if you'd like to speak on any of the items on the scheduled agenda, please fill out the blue card and give it to Mr. Bailey, if you don't mind. Okay, first item on the agenda is request approval of minutes of February 1st, 2016, regular city council meeting. Council members?
Motion to approve.
Mr. Wood?
Second.
Mr. Marlar? Discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Wood, seconded by Mr. Marlar, to approve February 1st minutes. Call for the vote. That passes unanimously. Okay, moving on to a public hearing. Item number 2, second reading of Ordinance 16-01-LC, which amends the Land Development Code by creating a new zoning district, residential office institutional, Crystal Beach residential ROI-CBR, and rezones the Sovereign Isle neighborhood from ROI-TD to ROI-CBR. Mr. Miller, will you please read that ordinance by title?
Yes, ma'am. Ordinance 16-01-LC by title is an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, relating to the creation of a new zoning district, ROI-CBR, and rezoning the Sovereign Isle subdivision from ROI-TD to ROI-CBR, providing for zoning map amendments, providing for an amendment to Table 7-1, implementing zoning districts, providing for amendments to Section 7.12.06, zoning districts by creating a new zoning district, residential office institutional, Crystal Beach residential, providing for amendments to the official zoning map as referenced in the Land Development Code, Section 7.12.01A2 zoning maps, to create a new zoning district, residential office institutional, Crystal Beach residential, providing for the redesignation of the Sovereign Isle neighborhood from residential office institutional tourist development to ROI-CBR, providing for the amendment of Land Development Code Section 7.12.06, zoning districts, Table 7-2, Table of Allowable Uses, providing for the amendment of Section 7.12.08, dimensional requirements, Table 7-3, Schedule of Dimensional Requirements, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for incorporation into the Land Development Code, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. The ordinance is before you for consideration on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Casella?
Yeah, this is being presented on second reading. This is for the Sovereign Isles Homeowners Association. 3/4 of the property owners have signed a petition supporting this. This really does two things out there for them. It gives them some protection, additional buffering from the properties, commercial properties that abuts them to the north, as well as makes their uses, and there's some, the current zoning does not allow long-term residential. And they have properties that's out there that's being used for that purpose, so it makes that consistent and conforming. So we would ask for your consideration of this on second reading.
Okay, thank you, sir. This is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against Ordinance 16-01-LC, please come forward at this time and identify yourself for the record, if you would, please. There's a little red button on the top there. There you go. Oops. Yeah, one more time. There you go.
Michelle Burr.
Okay.
Ooh. President of the Sovereign Isle Homeowners Association. And just wanted to say, first of all, huge thanks to the team at the city, Ashley Grana and Hank Woolard, who helped us do this. We came to them and said, we're actually non-conforming. All of our 37 homes are actually prohibited under the zoning as it reads today, and we said, please help us One, write a really simple zoning code that reflects what we are, which is a really small single street of single family, single home residential street, and that it doesn't have businesses on the street. We don't have B&Bs on the street. We're just homeowners, and out of our 37 parcels, I think only 2 are short-term rentals. So most of us are on Woodwind Drive full-time, year-round. And so we really want to say thanks to Ashley and Hank for helping us do this. We thank you for your consideration of this, and we had really strong support in the neighborhood for this. So I'd strongly encourage the passing of it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bird. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one else, we're going to move this on to City Council. Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll go ahead and make the recommended motion. I move the City Council adopt proposed ordinance 16-01-LC on second reading and direct staff to forward the adopted ordinance to the Municipal Code Corporation for publication in the Destin Land Development Code.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Mr. Ramswell? Okay, any discussion? Okay, seeing none, let's call for the vote. That passes unanimously. Okay, moving on to item number 3, final assessment resolution 16-04. I am going to let Mr. Miller please read that resolution by title.
Yes, ma'am. Resolution 16-04 by title is a resolution of the City of Destin, Florida, relating to reconstruction and funding of Regions Way, providing authority and definitions, confirming the initial assessment resolution, approving the assessment roll, providing for the imposition of the assessments to fund the Regions Way reconstruction project, providing for collection of the assessment pursuant to the Uniform Assessment Collection Act, providing for the effect of this resolution, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Casella?
Thank you, Mayor. This item we've been working on for the last 12 to 18 months. We presented this to you back in the summer of 15, where we received a petition from over half of the 126 property owners that own property in the Regions Way area. Under our charter, we were required to have over a majority of them to support it before we would be authorized to proceed with a special assessment. I think we've worked through all the issues. We've allocated all the costs. Our goal is, if this is a final assessment is approved this evening, that we would, it's related to items 18 and 19, with agreements with the tax collector as well as the property appraiser. If those are approved along, we would then take title to the property, to the road, pay off any tax liens that's out there, and then proceed. Our goal would be that between now and spring break 2016, we'll do some temporary repairs out there, and then between now and the 100 days of summer, actually completely reconstruct the road pursuant to the estimate. So we're really close to seeing the end of this journey. I think for the most part, everybody had been supportive of it, but we'd ask for your consideration of it. We do have representatives here from the Government Services Group, Camille Thorpe, who worked with us on the methodology on how to allocate the costs. Every property out there has been, based on their original applications for development, has the number of trips generated. So Regions Way has been literally sliced up into number of available trips based on the use. We're comfortable with that. That's a legally defensible mechanism. Again, we worked with the tax collector, we worked with the property appraiser, so we would ask for your authorization to proceed with this resolution, and we would be available to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against Resolution 16-04, please come forward at this time and identify yourself for the record. Okay, seeing none, we will now pass this on to City Council. Mr. Dixon.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to need to recuse myself as I work part-time as a consultant for Government Services Group that did the methodology for this. So I will need to recuse myself from the vote and discussion, if any.
Okay, sir, you'll just need to fill out the proper forms and turn those in and give it to the city clerk. Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, next up, Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make the recommended motion. I move the city council adopt resolution 16-04.
Okay, Mr. Foreman has a second. Do you have discussion as well?
Yeah, I'm just gonna make a comment on that. You could lose a small tank in some of those locations out on that road there, and I frequent all those businesses there, and I think this is a no-brainer.
Thank you, sir. Okay, anyone else? Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Wood to approve Resolution 16-04, seconded by Mr. Foreman. Seeing no further discussion, we will now call for the vote. Okay, that passes 4 with 1 abstention. Mr. Dixon. Okay, next item, public opportunity to speak on council propositions. I have no blue forms. We're good there. Okay, next item, consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Marlar, is there a second?
I'm sorry, you need a second?
Yes.
I'll
I do.
second.
Okay, Mr. Dixon. I think you can. That is, since it's a consent agenda item, Ms. Ramswell, can she vote on this item or not?
Yes, there's a specific ruling
Right.
that you
You can.
made.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, good. All right. Okay. We have a motion on the floor by Mr. Marlar, seconded by Mr. Dixon to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's call for the vote. That passes unanimously. Okay, moving on to project reports and comments from mayor and council. Ms. Ramswell.
Thank you, Mayor. As a lot of you know, and I'm sure all of us here on council and in this whole area are familiar, one of the things that we are challenged with is coming up with enough funds to pay for the sheriff's office, the fire district, the beach safety division, to help support the tourists that we have here. So on several occasions I've spoken, I know Mr. Dixon has spoken, and we've talked about it. We've spoken with the sheriff's office and both beach safety and fire chief here in terms of how much in funding they really need. And unfortunately, based on a year-round population of about 12,900, we just don't have the resources to support everybody according to the number of tourists. And so that's something that I have been very vocal about trying to get help with. And I actually received a call yesterday from Senator Gates, who had asked me to come and speak in front of the Senate today in favor of Bill 1520, which actually provides that the TDCs can now supplement 10% of the revenues generated to provide for public safety personnel. So that would be a godsend in our area to help support, our sheriff's office and all these folks that are out here that we just need more of them, especially come high season. So been working on that. It passed today unanimously, and the goal is to try to get it in there with the House and have a meeting of the minds and have it pass this legislative session. So that would be fantastic, I think, for this city, this whole area. It was great. Sheriff Ashley was there today, as was the city manager and a council member from Fort Walton Beach. So good to see some local support, and I really look forward to hopefully getting this passed and supporting our sheriffs and all our public safety personnel here and making sure we keep our tourists and our residents safe. So it was a good day.
Thank you.
Sure.
Is that it? Okay. Mr. Dixon?
As I said, I'll bring it up every time. Any process on derelict boats, please give us a report.
As I said, the 2 boats that are, one in Joe's Bayou, one in the harbor, is still in the process of being prosecuted through the derelict, but I don't have anything positive to provide you based on except for what we had reported at the last meeting. But we are continuing to work with FWC to get those 2 boats removed.
Is that it,
Okay.
Mr. Dixon?
Yeah, and the next thing would be that have we made any progress with trying to figure out what we could do with a piece of property on Main Street where we basically cleared that land all the way, and, have we gotten a price on a fence or anything with that?
Yeah, we're getting a price on it. I should have something back to you within the next week or so on the estimate of what it would cost to put a fence there. So we'll get that to you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. Sure.
I guess I'm unfamiliar with the property y'all are talking about.
It is the place where we have the parking that is not quite to Indian Trail on the left-hand side, just past the Joe's Bayou and Carol Air Lake little park that we have there. And what's happened is that the property was cleared, basically taking all the trees out, but all the way to the fence line, and exposed the fence line that's back there where there's a neighboring home. And I just, to me, it looks terrible. I mean, I wish we could have left a buffer there. And that way it couldn't have been all seen, and we wouldn't have had to go to the expensive, trying to fund a fence or anything to go there, but we do need something there. To me, it does look bad. I don't know what the overall goal of this whole thing is, but I do know that, I'm not blaming the workers or anybody else that did the work. I just would like to kind of know what we're doing when we do things like that. That way I can answer questions that are posed to me. People are calling me and asking about the possibility of runoff from where we're clearing and grubbing the land and stuff like that. So could you tell us maybe what we're looking at with that and what we're planning to make out of it?
Well, we basically just cleared it up, some of the invasive vegetation and stuff. And unfortunately, one of the unintended consequences of it, and you're correct, it did expose the property, I guess, I would consider that to the west, and there is a chain link fence with some barbed wire on it and so forth. So we do plan to put reestablish some vegetation in there, as well as try to screen it, with vegetation. But pursuant to your last meeting, you'd ask us to look at what it would cost to put a fence in there, and we're doing that. So the intent was just to clear it up and get the invasive plant material, vegetation out of there. That's the positive part of that. The negative was now you can see a whole bunch of stuff that you couldn't see previously.
Okay, Mr. Foreman?
I have nothing tonight, Mayor.
Okay, thanks, sir. Mr. Marler?
Just a couple of quick things. One, noticed that we're getting some shoaling at the harbor entrance. I was wondering if we're going to monitor that and keep an eye, because with us coming up on spring break, we're going to have traffic out there.
Yeah, we'll continue to look at that, and we'll continue to work with the state. In our conversation probably 6 months to a year ago with the DEP, they've been advised that we may have to do some dredging and be able to remove some of that material through one of those long-armed, machines. So we're looking at that.
Okay, and I know we're going to do in the 17, we're going to talk about the crosswalks, but I understand that we're going to reduce the speed limit to 25 after we put those in, is what my understanding is. And if that's the case, are we going to retime the two lights at Stallman and Benning too?
Now, that had been a recommendation from the Harbor CRA Advisory Committee. I think we're planning to have a discussion with you on March the 7th, get your concurrence on reducing the speed limits, and we'll do that and bring that back, and then make a request to FDOT. But that reducing the speed limit was simply a request from the CRA Advisory Committee to you, and then that would come to the CRA board on March 7th.
Okay, because I've had two conflicting things. The first thing was FDOT said no, and then somebody's telling me FDOT has said yes, because I know we tried to do this like 2 years ago to get it reduced.
Yeah, well, that was a specific recommendation to CRA Advisory. That's coming back to you on the 7th, and y'all can weigh in, and then that give us the direction to ask FDOT formally to reduce the speed limit. Okay. I thought they wanted to go down to, where's David at, 35?
We're already at 35.
25 was the limit? Steve? Okay. All right, we'll bring that back to you on the 7th.
Okay, yeah, that's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Morrow. Mr. Wood?
Thank you, Mayor. I got a few things tonight. In the past, I've served on a state transportation committee working on our state transportation plan for the last 5 or 6 months. And earlier in the year, I reported back there was 3 parts to this: the vision element, the policy element, and the implementation element. The vision part had been done. I just got my policy element in the mail, so it's now done. So the committee that I served on did the 2 things we were supposed to do: the vision and the policy. The The FDOT staff is now working on the last part of this, which is projects and costs. And it'll probably take 8 months to a year before that document hits the street, but it's on its way. And that'll take us into the future, probably 30 to 40 years. It'll be updated every 7 to 10 years. Try to keep up with the times and hopefully be a good document. There's a TPO meeting in this room on Thursday of the Okaloosa-Walton TPO. For those of you that are interested, one of the things we'll be talking about is the Okaloosa Island Leaseholders Association has proposed a linear park/path across Okaloosa Island to make pedestrian safety increased. I think they got some money from the TDC already for design, so they're coming to us asking for our support for increased pedestrian safety on the island. I've got a letter ginned up. As long as the TPO approves, we'll be signing that letter, hopefully. On Friday, for those of you that like to ride trains, we've been trying to get Northwest Florida, Jacksonville to New Orleans restarted for the old, what was it called, Sunset Limited, I think, train. We've been trying for years to get something restarted across Northwest Florida. The Southern Rail Commission and Amtrak are actually running a train from New Orleans to Jacksonville. It's going to be a lot of elected officials and media. I'll be getting on in Pensacola, going to Chipley. So I'll get to see the station in Crestview and I think Defuniak Springs, kind of look at the area, see what's out there. We're trying to get this restarted. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but it looks like we have a concerted effort trying to get the process restarted, whether it's going to be Amtrak or something else. As long as there's train service, I like riding trains. I'm excited about the future, and hopefully something will happen. And I think that'll do it for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. I have a couple items too. First of all, our worst nightmare, I think, was recognized this past week when Mr. Casella called each of the council members and said that one of our local longtime businesses was on fire. I do want to comment about how great a job the Destin Fire Control District Fire Department did in putting out that fire, the hard work they did, and they deserve so much. That could have been such a bad situation and had moved on to different parts of the harbor. So I just want to give the Destin Fire Control District a huge shout out for the job that they did. We greatly, greatly appreciate them. The other item I have is next Tuesday night on the 23rd, right here in this room, we have the State of the City address, and all of the public is invited to that. We're really excited about it. Staff's been working really, really hard to try to showcase what the city has done over the last year, and I get the beauty of talking about what this council and Mayor Ponder did over the past year, and it is truly my honor to be able to celebrate with them what they've accomplished. So I invite you all out to please come 5:30 next Tuesday night. There's going to be some appetizers and a good time to mingle with your neighbors and see what the city's done over the past year. I think that's it. That's all I have for this evening. Next up, we have city attorney comments. Mr. Miller?
No items, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, sir. City land use?
No items, thank you.
Okay, sir. All right, next item up. First reading of ordinance 16-09-CC, amendment to the City of Destin Cemetery Rules and Regulations. Mr. Miller, you want to read that by title?
Yes, ma'am. Ordinance number 16-09-CC by title is an ordinance of the City of Destin regulating city cemeteries, providing for authority, providing for purpose, providing for modifying City Code Section 7-28, tombstones, monuments, and markers, providing for incorporation into the Code of Ordinances, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. The ordinance is before you for consideration on first reading.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Casella?
This is really a pretty minor tweak or change to the current ordinance. Phase 2, some of you may have been on the city council when this was originally adopted back in the 2000 timeframe, but what this does is Phase 2 allows at-grade ground level grave markers and limits their size to 12 inches by 32 inches. What we are proposing, we've had a number of complaints, and we actually have some markers out there that's bigger than that. And what we're asking is for consideration to increase the size from 12 by 32 to 19 by 37. They'll still be ground level at grade. That will be the only changes. It allows the family to do a little bit more of an expression to their loved ones. So we'd ask for your consideration of this item.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, council members. Mr. Wood?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm the one sponsoring this action tonight, so I'll go ahead and take this. I'm going to go ahead and make the motion. I'd like to get a second, then I'll talk about why I'm doing this. I move for approval of proposed ordinance 16-09-CC on first reading and direct staff to advertise it for second reading.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it, Mayor.
Mr. Marlowe. Okay,
And
discussion.
Mayor, as the city manager said, you know, in phase 2, we have at-grade headstone markers. We had an individual in town that lost a child and was trying to put a stone out there and was sent out and measured existing stones. Unfortunately, some of the existing stones were bigger than the ordinance allowed. That person came back to the staff and said, we were told this stone was too big. Well, I got involved in this and thought this ought to be a pretty easy fix. If I was in the position of the family, I'd want my headstone out there. I took my wife out, we measured every stone in phase 2 and found that there was all kinds of sizes out there. Some of the sizes are bigger than our current ordinance allowed. So I'm trying to do two things. I'm solving the family who has the issue with the child, and also to make sure all the current stones will be then legally conforming once we change the size from 12 to 32 and 19 by 37. Because the biggest individual stones out there were 19 by 37, not 12 by 32. And then in phase 1, you could have the raised monuments that were up to 64 inches in length. And I added a second part to phase 2 where you can have the double headstones up to 64 inches in length to be the same as phase 1. They're still ground level, but they could be 64 inches because there's some already out there that were 61. But because this 64 was allowed in the first phase, I figured let's just standardize it, make it 64 for both phases to make it the same. So that's why I'm doing this. It's a twofer. I'd like to have unanimous vote on this. If I could get that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other discussion? Anyone? Ms. Ramswell?
Thank you. I have a question. How did we get stones out there that aren't in conformity? I mean, do we have a process where there's supposed to be like review and approval?
Yeah, and I'll let Mr. Bailey fill in the gaps, but my understanding, we give and work with all the funeral homes and tell them our regulations. A lot of the times what happens is they do the burial, then the stone comes in later, and then it exceeds what the limitations are. So it's one of those issues where the stone we tell them that it's going to need to be 12 by 32, and then they actually put a bigger stone out there. So it's one of those things kind of after the fact has already been, you know, the deceased's name and all the stuff is on the stone. So I think that's, Ms. Bailey, is that how it's been happening?
Yeah, a lot of those grave markers that were non-conforming were placed there 10 or 15 years ago. Several years ago, we made it a part of our checklist to provide a copy of the ordinance to those who purchased burial plots. We also send ordinances to the monument companies that we have conducted business with as far back as Pensacola, Defuniak Springs, Milton, just so they know the rules. Of course, there's a lot others that we don't know, so we can't force anyone to contract with those people, with those monument companies. So sometimes we have companies that don't know the rules and create one that's bigger. But that was, a lot of those were happened about 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mr. Bailey. Is that it? Or do you have another
No,
question?
I actually have, so I guess, and I completely understand the scenario, but I hate setting a precedent of let's change a rule or let's change a regulation to accommodate the violators. You know what I mean? And I understand, I think, you know, understandably, the situation is delicate, and I'm not, you know, going to badmouth it for any reason at all, but that is concerning to me to give the appearance of, oh, well, you know, if they broke the rule, we're just going to change the rule to accommodate them. But
I think what's happened is I think now that we've had again, I wasn't here when the ordinance was amended back in the early 2000s, but I think we are now finding that the proposed size of 12 inches by 32 is just really just too restrictive in many cases, especially if anybody wants to do any kind of homes or things to their loved ones. So I think that's what we're finding, that size. I think everybody had the best of intent back then, but they're finding that 12 by 32 versus 19 by 37 was just too restrictive, and that's why I thought we were proposing it. It does help this particular family, but the size has just been a little bit too limiting, for individuals to express their, their love for their, individual that's passed away.
Yeah, it was interesting to me. I actually went out there too and went out and measured and took a look around, and I was surprised at the number of double markers, considering those weren't allowed at all in phase 2. I know according to our code, it actually stipulates that people in violation are to be fined. Did we go that route, or did we just let it go? Okay. All right, so this is just essentially then increasing the size of the single monument, or not monument, marker, and then adding the double marker, which makes the phase 1 and phase 2 sizes for the flush with the ground markers compatible. All right, so we're not adding or allowing any monuments, anything going above in phase 2.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Foreman? Thank you, Ms. Ramswell. You didn't have anything else? Okay, Ms. Mr. Foreman?
There wasn't, Mayor, there was time in the past when the rules were not so stringent, let's say, and that's why you found what you did out there. I know I had the unhappy task of finding a stone for my late wife, and in fact, I dealt directly with the monument company. I didn't go through any funeral home or anyone like that, and basically I looked at a catalog and selected it. So I know how it happened. And actually I prefer the route that Mr. Wood is suggesting here, because there's nothing more sensitive than a cemetery in anybody's family, and so they certainly, we should have the rules in place, and we should have a procedure for making sure it works.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Marlar?
Thank you, Mayor. A little back history so y'all understand where all this is coming from. BC, before condos and before a lot of stuff, there was only one cemetery, and that was on Calhoun, which is now called the Marlar Memorial Cemetery. Technically, it was a private cemetery because the property was owned by the Marlar family, but just about everybody in Destin was buried there. It got to where all those plots were pretty much gone. So at that time, which the only ruling committee we had here was our community center board, they purchased the land that where the phase 1 sits, the largest land. When that was actually put in place, ground level stones was what was supposed to be allowed. But because, and I know because some of my family were buried there within the first 3 to 4 years, and so what happened is that you had people who donated money and stuff to help buy the property, and they went in there and they told the community center, well, we're going to build a bigger stone monument, and you're not going to stop us. And the community center board had no real authority to stop them. So that's why in phase 1 you've got all kinds of stones. And I'm just as guilty probably as Mr. Foreman is in phase 1. I have some family members that are buried there, and I dealt directly with the stone company. Also, the size of the original stone, they're basing that on, if you're military, you look at the military stone that is provided if you're a veteran. That's the basic size, is the 12-inch by 32, and that's what they send you, and that's all you get unless you want to put your own. When we purchased phase 2, or started phase 2, the idea was to go back to the ground level. There was a second reason for that is in phase 1, a lot of people put the slabs over the entire grave. We had complaints when they'd go mow that tire marks were on the slabs, and a lot of people got upset over that, which I can understand, but that's, they got to mow the lawn, and you can't just go out there and mow with a weed eater. You have to use the big riding lawnmowers sometimes. So that being said, and along with what Mr. Wood is saying, we have a situation where, the Marie family doesn't need, to me, a lot of rules and regulations. They're having to go through enough tough time. And to accommodate, as Mr. Wood said, for a poem or something like that, because I wrote some big things on the ones that I have out there, and my dad's, my dad and my uncles and all that. And if you go out there, there's even a set of graves that nobody's in, and that would be the Kelly family. There's a set of Kelly graves out there. Nobody's in it, but it's got this huge monument. So anyway, that's the back history of it. And as I said, this was done back in 71, 72, when the original phase cemetery was done. A side note on that, it was nothing but sand. Over the years, the family members of the bereaved went out there and planted grass, because I know my mom and I planted some at my father's area, and so a lot of that grass before the city bought it was also planted by volunteers who really were sympathetic toward that. Now, as far as the Martyr Cemetery goes, it's still privately owned, but there are locals who are still allowed to be buried there. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Muller. Mr. Wood, do you have closing comment?
Yeah, all the different markers out there, some folks did poems on them, some folks didn't. That 19 by 37 will give, whether it's individuals or the double stone, plenty of room to do what they need to do out there, keep them at ground level, keep them cleaned off. I think that's a good thing for everybody, so I appreciate the support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Wood, seconded by Mr. Marlar, to approve on first reading 16-09-CC. Let's call for the vote. That passes unanimously. Okay, moving on to item number 17, first reading of ordinance 16-10-CN, approval of easements and license agreement for FDOT US Highway 98 project. Mr. Miller, could you please read that ordinance by title?
Ordinance 16-10-CN by title is an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida relating to donation and conveyance of permanent and temporary easements and a license agreement to the Florida Department of Transportation, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing the need for such conveyance, providing for the mailing of a certified copy of the ordinance, and providing for an effective date. The ordinance is before you for consideration on first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Costello?
Yeah, if you remember, the six laning of 98 from the county line to Airport Road is scheduled, I think, in the 2018 timeframe. And
He said Roger.
okay, and so working with DOT, they approached us about several of the side streets that interface with Highway 98 as relates to giving them easements and or license agreements to make those transitions. So this is what's being presented to you. We've given you drawings, color drawings, trying to show where the location of it is. A little cumbersome showing on the drawings because you got so much, they're surveying right-of-way maps, but these are what they need to be able to successfully do that project, and we ask for your consideration of this.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Wood.
Thank you. I'll make the recommended motion. I move the City Council approve ordinance 16-10-CN on first reading and direct staff to advertise and schedule the ordinance for second reading at the regular March 7th council meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, Mayor.
Mr. Marlar has a second. Okay, any discussion? Any other discussion? Mr. Wood, did you have something else?
Yeah, just going to update right now, the six-lane process will start on the Walton side of the county line late this fall, November's timeframe. And the Okaloosa side from the county line back to Airport Road will start in about March of next year. So be careful what you wish for, because it be coming. 1,000 orange barrels and all. Have fun.
Okay, thanks, sir. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Wood, seconded by Mr. Marlar, to approve on first reading ordinance 16-10-CN. Let's call for the vote. There you go. That passes unanimously. All right, moving on to item number 18, property appraiser and tax collector agreements for Regions Way. Mr. Casella?
Yeah, these are agreements related to item number 3. It's basically agreements for the property appraiser and the tax collector to levy the special assessments and collect the special assessment for Regions Way. Under this arrangement, those who do not pay in advance, and we expect a number, especially to single-family property owners, to pay in advance. This requires that we pay them 2% to the property appraiser and 2% to the tax collector, and that has been calculated into the special assessment. So we would ask for your authorization of both of these agreements to do the levy and the collection of the Regions Way special assessment.
Okay, thank you, sir. Council members, Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the City Council approve the attached form of agreement for the property appraiser services and uniform collection agreement for the tax collector services and authorize their execution by the city manager.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Foreman. Okay, Mr. Dixon.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I will recuse myself again from this vote. The company I work for did do some work with the tax collector about the methodology, and so I'll be recusing myself from this vote as well.
Okay, sir, you just need to fill out the proper paperwork and file it with the clerk. Okay, thank you. All righty, any other discussion on that item? Okay, we've got a motion on the floor by Mr. Wood, seconded by Mr. Foreman to approve property appraiser and tax collector agreements for Regions Way. Let's call for the vote. Okay, that passes 4 with 1 abstention, Mr. Dixon. Okay, moving on to item number 19, acceptance of quitclaim deed authorization to pay taxes for Regions Way. Mr. Casella?
Yep. This is the final step. This is actually, we do have executed quitclaim deeds from the current owner of the Regions Way, from the 3 entities that own Regions Way, and they're being basically held in escrow pending the action of the City Council to accept the quitclaim deeds and for us to then officially own it. In addition, kind of the final step, there is outstanding back taxes and certificates effective through the end of the month in the amount of $4,781.31 that we need to pay to clear the title to the fee simple property. So we'd ask for your authorization of that item. And again, that money has been included in the cost of the special assessment. So it's been all factored in, and we're being reimbursed from that, from the affected and benefiting property owners. So we'd ask for your authorization to accept the quitclaim deed and deeds, as well as to, pay the back taxes and clear the certificates through the end of this month. And then we will be the owner of the road. Again, we'll do the temporary repairs between now and spring break and make the road lease safe. And then after that, geared toward making the permanent repairs. And you'll see on, hopefully on your March 7th agenda, a contract to do the permanent repairs so we can get it in place by the 100 days of summer. So we'd ask for your authorization of both these items.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Casella. Council members, Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. I happily move that the City Council accept the quitclaim deed and authorize payment of outstanding taxes and certificates for the Regions Way parcel.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Ms. Ramswell? Okay, Ms. Ramswell, do you have comments or just seconded?
No, it's for the motion.
Okay. Any other? Okay. I don't see any other lights on. Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Wood, seconded by Ms. Ramswell, to accept the quitclaim deed and authorize to pay taxes for Regions Way. Let's call for the vote. That passes unanimously. Okay, city manager comments?
None tonight.
Okay, thank you, sir. Comments from the audience? Is there? Yes, sir. Want to come forward and identify yourself for the record?
Yes, ma'am. Steve Menschel. As you know, we have an election coming up, and I had a conversation with the city manager today. The citizens of Destin have very little opportunity to actually meet all the candidates under one room at one time to actually meet with them. We have a forum coming up on March the 3rd, but other than that, that's the only public event we have scheduled. So I spoke with the city manager, and what we're looking to do is have a meet and greet for all candidates Monday night at the community center from 6 to 7:30. It is not going to be a forum. It's strictly going to be all of us in one room at one time where the citizens can come. We'll get this out to all of the candidates tonight where they can advertise it on their social media, as well as the Destin Log has agreed to put that out as well. So the city manager and I agreed that this was the best way to do it, to bring it forth to the council and get approval. There is precedent, if you will, in the standpoint, 2 years ago in this very room, we had candidate forums. So the building has been used in the past, city property. And also the city host meet and greets for city managers in the past. So again, this is not going to be a forum. No candidate's going to get up and speak individually. They'll just be around tables, and citizens will be allowed to, will certainly be there and can go one-on-one and just have a conversation with the different candidates.
Okay, well, I will turn that item over to the city council, but you hurt my feelings. February 23rd is a grand opportunity for every candidate to be out, and there is time, and we're even going to serve hors d'oeuvres
I understand.
We talked
about that as well. We just didn't want to, we didn't know if that was going to, just was another event. And the reason we chose Monday, number one is availability, and the second thing is we want to do it before the candidate forum so we can get that information out to everybody.
Okay, and also the item that was done in this room was sponsored by the Destin Chamber of Commerce when they had that candidate forum.
Sure.
And normally
Well,
sponsorship
not the
of
one
others.
I'm talking about.
Yeah, okay. All right, council members.
I have a question for Mr. Miller on that. Will that be a conflict for me and Mr. Dixon and Mr. Wood on this as far as?
You're not speaking into your microphone.
I'm sorry. Will there be a conflict? This needs to be posted if the three of us are going to be there. Is that not correct?
No, with election scenarios, there are some exceptions carved out for you. I would tell you, though, to be cautious regarding issues that are pending or likely to come before the city council for you to enter into direct communication. So, I don't have any specifics as to how this is being conducted or what's expected. And I'd be glad to receive some more direct information and see if I think it's a problem for you.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, if you would, just to answer Mr. Miller's question, there will be no
Well,
question.
I'm not going to do that in this setting.
It's now turned over to city council. Let's see what they come up with.
All right.
Council members? Or Mr. Casella, did you have a?
Yeah, let me
Don't see any.
weigh in a second. When Mr. Menchel mentioned this to me this afternoon, he'd sent me an email last night. City staff tries really, really hard, once you're into the election cycle, not to show any preferential treatment toward any candidates or any form or so forth. So, and when the request came through, normally there is what I call some entity host the forum or meet and greet. And in this particular case, there's really not going to be a host. We've had requests from candidates in this election as well as others to have access to city facilities, and we've just really tried to avoid that because we don't want to create any inference that we are showing any preference toward a particular candidate, especially in this election cycle when you have 11 candidates for city council and 2 for mayor. So there's a lot of competition here. So, and we'll do whatever you want. The facility is available. The awkwardness of it is normally there's a host. It could be the Citizens for Good Leadership. It could be the chamber. It could be, the Republican Party, Democratic Party. Somebody usually hosts these types of things. In this case, it would just be open. The candidates, I guess, would show up, and individuals would be free to come in and meet and talk with these candidates. But again, that's the only awkwardness for us, is that we try really hard not to show any preferences or anything toward any candidate in this running, because at the end of this process, you're going to have potentially new bosses, new elected officials. So that's why it's a little awkward for us to do it, because we've not done it before. So, but again, we'll take whatever direction you want us to do.
Okay, council members, any comments? Ms. Ramswell?
Thank you, Mayor. So does there need to be a host, and how does that work with the city? I know that you just mentioned, like in the past, there's been with the chamber and with CGL. Does that mean that it's like a city condoned event, or how does that work?
You specifically, normally you have an entity that ends up being the host that sponsors it, maybe that's not a good word, any kind of political activity. And this, the forum, I guess, is scheduled for March the 3rd. The Citizens for Good Leadership, we briefed all the candidates. The two things that we've done on this election cycle and historically election cycles is provide them, all the candidates, with a booklet of do's and don'ts for the elections, as well as I provided about a 2-hour briefing over at the chamber for all the candidates on citywide elected issues. And outside of that, we kind of step back and let the candidates do what they do. This is a little different than we're being asked to kind of not host, but allow a city facility to be used for political activity. And that's where it's a little awkward for us.
Does this require a vote or a blessing or nothing?
I told Mr. Mitchell that I was not comfortable providing the city facility for this purpose because we basically have, had arms, lengths on this type of stuff. So he's asking for y'all to basically, if you would be comfortable with doing it.
I mean, we're not showing favoritism towards anybody because it's open to all the candidates, right or wrong? I mean,
Well, if you don't mind, can I weigh on this
Sure,
just a little bit? My only thought process, and I'm a little concerned going down this slippery slope. In the past, throughout the years, we've had, for instance, the Destin Log. The Destin Log spent their money on advertising, an event. They hosted the event. In some cases, they've provided water, or whatever for people in the crowd. I think this puts the staff, does the city spend money for candidates? And that's normally not anything we've ever done, because there is an expenditure that would have to, we'd have to have staff here and things like that. And normally it's not been done like that, although these are city facilities. And should anyone want to take that, should the log, should any other organization want to utilize this, and they be responsible, and they provide refreshments, they put the announcements online or in the newspaper or however they want to get that information, then that's kind of their thing. And in that way, it doesn't kind of muddy the waters when it comes to, us being in a political situation at that time. So I think if there is a motion to be made and it is suggested that it be done, there needs to be consideration on who's going to pay for it and everything else. So, and it's up to you guys. This is just an unusual request, but not one that can't be made. So it's up to you guys.
So what costs would be involved? There's no rental fee. And is this during hours that the community center is already open? So it would already be staffed?
Don't know.
Yeah, we do have rental fees and we do have expenses associated. To me, it's more of a philosophical issue. And again, do you want city staff, the city manager's office, to be involved in these? And these are really political campaigns. And it's not, and we try to stay as neutral on it, not to show any of the candidates any preferential or provide them access to a city facility, one candidate over another. And we basically say, whatever you do, y'all do, as long as it's consistent with, state elections law. And that's the awkwardness of it for me. Is there a lot of expense? No. And Lance, you can weigh in on the actual expense.
Sure. Just like any group that would want to use one of our rooms at the community center, they would have to fill out a request. And there is generally, by council's fee ordinance, there is a fee associated with that. So when it gets tricky for staff is when we're asked to waive a fee, I would need permission to do that.
Okay, Mr. Foreman,
Yes.
do you have another? Were you done?
Nope.
Yeah, you're, okay. Mr. Foreman?
Yeah, I see some problems. I can foresee lots of campaign material showing up and being circulated. And I can see those kinds of things going on. Plus, there are no rules, which bothers me a little bit. I like the mayor's comment earlier is that we have the best opportunity the following night for everybody to show up and to listen to the mayor and to be able to, if they want an opportunity, they're going to have it before her speech, and they'll have it probably as long as they want to stay before they turn the lights out. You know, that they could take advantage of that, and we would encourage that, I would think. That would be the opportunity, plus those of us that know the rules for us know how to avoid it so that we don't get ourselves in trouble. And so I think, you know, I favor that, and that doesn't require anybody's approval.
Okay, Mr. Dixon?
I was going to basically say that I favor this, and the reason I favor it is that everybody's being invited. You know, the fact is that we have had items like this come to our city property before. You know, I personally wouldn't have a problem with it as long as we knew and the ground rules were laid out up front that nobody was going to stand up and give their vision for the city and do anything that would violate any kind of sunshine laws or anything like that. And I personally don't have a problem with it, although I do see you know, the next night we're having something else. And my thing is that with 13 people that are going to be asked questions at our forum, how much face time are we going to get, and how much are people going to be able to see from this forum that's coming up? Not to say anything negative about the forum that's coming up, but you know, with as many people that are going to be there, it's going to be very difficult for anybody to get their message out on the night of the forum, so on the 3rd. So I personally don't see a problem with it, but you know, if other council members do, you know, I understand it, and you know I'd do everything within my power to make sure I didn't do anything to violate any laws, just to say that. So.
Mr. Dixon, did you want to make a motion to that effect? And if you do, will you please specify who is going to be doing the inviting and all the other stuff, and who's the responsible party for it?
Well, one thing I'd like to ask is, basically, we're talking about city staff unlocking a room for us, and city staff has already got to be there. Am I correct with that? I mean,
You know, that's the less of a concern for me than who's going to be the moderator.
it's not, there won't be a moderator. It's not a forum of any kind.
The way it was described to me was every one of the candidates was going to have a couple, 3 minutes to ask questions,
Okay.
introduce themselves, just the whole forum, so.
I'm getting a no from Mr. Minchell. I think it was just a meet and greet is how it was. But who is going to do the inviting and place the?
Each candidate would invite whoever it is they want to invite.
Okay. Okay, so is this a motion?
Yeah, I will make a motion to that effect, that we allow the use of the community center for a candidate meet and greet on Monday, what date is it, the 22nd?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Okay, and is there, are you waiving the charge of the community center?
Yes, and to waive the charge of the community center.
My second stands.
Okay.
Mayor, point of order, if I may.
Actually, they're making a first and a second, and we're opening for discussion, so there is no point of order. But if you'll allow Mr. Marlar, and then you're up next. Is that okay? Okay, Mr. Marlar?
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's a noble thing to try to do, and I see where the city's problem is, and then it goes back to the same legal issue I'm asking Mr. Miller. You're going to get all of us in a room, and what's going to happen is certain subjects, Mr. Wood, myself, and Mr. Dixon would not be able to answer because it's pending issues. Therefore, it would look more like we were stonewalling and not giving the answers that the public wants. And that's where the touchy issue is, because people will base their the attitude on whether they're going to vote for this particular candidate or not on if they get the answer they want. And there's 3 of us up here that might not be able to give them the answer they want because that is still pending in the process. And I see where the city's going. There should be a sponsor, not just all the candidates get together and stuff, because again, there are no ground rules. With any forums we've ever had before, there are ground rules. Certain questions cannot be answered, especially ones that have to do with personal issues or anything like that, and stick to the subjects. And that's what the main forums are for. They stick to the subjects and not try to delve into personal issues. I would participate if it looked like we had some ground rules and somebody was sponsoring it other than just the candidates themselves, because I think that's where we're going to run into a major problem. Because I feel that the Sunshine Law is A, going to be in violation in some way or form, or B, if somebody doesn't like our answer, or somebody else's answer, they're not going to have a fair chance to vote or anything like that. I don't know what the other candidates say, but I mean, from the standpoint of myself, Mr. Dixon, Mr. Wood being up here right now, we have issues that we can't talk about that might be asked of us, and that's going to be, basically, they're going to say we're stonewalling, and we're not. We're just trying to keep ourselves out of trouble.
Okay, thank you.
But I can't support this.
Thank you, Mr. Marler. Mr. Wood?
Thank you, Mayor. I would request we have a motion and a second on the floor. If we're going to do a motion and a second, the first motion needs to be to set aside the order of the day and walk on this non-agenda item with a supermajority vote before we even vote on it. And with 5 votes, that's going to require a 4-to-1 vote to do.
Mr. Wood, you are absolutely right.
Mayor,
Please
I'm
forgive
withdrawing.
me.
I'm withdrawing. I'm withdrawing my motion.
You are absolutely right, and I apologize. I should have caught that, and I didn't, and you did. Good on you. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, so you've withdrawn the motion? Okay. All right, there's no further discussion on that item. Okay. Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak? Yes, ma'am. Please come forward and identify yourself for the record.
I am Jane Aragwell, I'm a local real estate broker, and I'm also the owner of Honey Baked Ham. And I would just like to say on that motion that I'm very disappointed that you're not going to allow that to be done. I think that the consuming public does not have the opportunity to meet and mingle with the politicians and to really get to know them. All we are limited to is what we read in the newspapers. And I'm very sorry that a city facility cannot be used, that is available for the citizens, will not be used to have a meet and greet. And if any of the politicians do not want to show up, if they're that chicken, then they don't need to be
Ma'am,
elected.
please refrain
Yes,
from
ma'am,
negative
I
comments.
apologize. I do apologize. I really do.
Okay, thank you.
If they do not want to show up, then that is what they should, how they should be.
Okay.
And I think the citizens would consider whether they do show up or not as to whether they should be elected.
Okay,
All
thank
right?
you.
And I'm sincerely sorry.
Yes, ma'am, I
Thank you.
understand. Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Mr. Bagby, please come up and identify yourself for the record. Of course, everybody knows who you are, so.
Jim Bagby, C-Star Vista. And I will come up and have a little bit different take on it because I support the action that the council just took for this reason. Anybody that's ever done anything understands what the Gobi cutoff line is. And for those of you who don't know what a Gobi cutoff line is, it's the general officer bright idea cutoff line. Okay, when you're in a large organization, and this is a large organization, at some point you have to do this. This is a great idea. This would have been a fabulous idea 6 months ago, and we could have scheduled it. But unless you can show me 11 people, 13, counting the 2 mayoral candidates, that will all stand and say, yes, I think that's a good idea, then you shouldn't do this. Because what it does, I'm not chicken. I'll meet with you tonight or tomorrow, or I have met with people for the last month. And somebody calls, I go over to their house. I go over to their house even if they don't call sometimes. But it's just how I roll. But what it is if I've got a small child and I've got something scheduled next Tuesday at the elementary school with my child, and I don't show, you're making me choose between my 6 days' notice to choose between me and my child and their event, that's not fair to me as a candidate. That's not fair to any candidate. Now, my children are not small, Well, one of them's short, but not small. And so I would say, if you want to consider it, you do it on the 14th of March, okay? And you have them come back at the next meeting, and you have somebody sponsor it, and you have somebody lay out the details, because what I can see on such short notice is, the people that are here tonight, the candidates are here tonight, I'm going to have a table. Somebody's going to set that table up. I assume it's going to be staff, but it might be me. And I'm going to have all my flyers, I'm going to have pictures, I'm going to have my bio printed out, and I'm going to have all this stuff. But if I don't find out about it until tomorrow or Thursday, and I can't get that stuff printed out because I didn't find out about it until a day or 2 days later, again, that's not fair to the candidate. We ought to be as fair and impartial to all the candidates as we can. Show up on the 23rd. You can show up an hour early, and you can mingle all you want, and I will answer all your questions tonight.
Okay,
Thank
you,
you, madam.
sir. Okay, anyone else in the audience? Okay, seeing none, we stand adjourned.